Hey folks, so we've been through the marathon of all the gubbins of the steering and the cables and the sprockets and the chains. So how about some more fun stuff? How about some cabinetry? How about some woodwork? How about some mahogany? Let's get on with building the actual cabinet for the helm, shall we? Hello and welcome to Travels with Geordie. My name is Peter and this good-looking fellow here is Geordie, and we live together on this wooden motor cruiser here in Victoria, British Columbia, all the while fixing it up for some pretty extensive cruising someday. If that's the sort of thing you might be interested in, please consider sticking around and subscribing. We'd love to have you. I'd also really like to take the opportunity to thank my patrons, whom without I really wouldn't have the ability to do this every week. Thank you all so much. And for those of you who would like to win a Travels with Geordie t-shirt, stick around to the end of the episode and I'll show you how you can do that. Cheers! Let's get on with it. Three components to the helm cabinet. There's the upper section, which is basically the console, which basically will hold the instrumentation. The steering shaft will come into it, and that's basically secured to the bulkhead. Then there is a front panel, which is basically freestanding. It'll be attached to the console and it'll be attached to the sole. But other than that, there's not really much of a cabinet because the whole side is actually the face of a drawer, box, whatever you want to call it, that's going to slide out and enable all this storage in here. What I'm going to do for now is just build the top part, which is the actual console part, and then that is the basis for the geometry for everything else. So let's get to that. And here's a little project I got to do before I can mount my new helm, in that this has to be stained because I'm going to see some of this wood, so therefore I have to stain it. Okay, let's let that set up for a little bit, and then I'll wipe it down. Looks great though, doesn't it? I absolutely love this stain. So I'm going to start by making the sections of this cabinet a little bit extra long because they involve kind of trimming and scribing to fit. So there's no sense nailing it the first time. Where's my saw? Down here. Gotcha! So these are just going to be a couple of temporary gussets to make sure that the whole thing stays square while I'm working. And what I'll do is screw them onto the top and the bottom of this assembly like that. And that'll act as a clamp to keep it square while it's gluing up. What I need to do is put a little bit of sheathing tape on here. And that's to keep any glue from sticking to it. Okay, so to expedite this, in other words, make sure it goes relatively smoothly, I'm going to pre-attach everything, pre-square it up, and then just remove enough screws I could swing it out, put the glue in, and put it back on. I know there are schmancy corner clampy thingies, and in fact, to be honest, I have actually bought some in the past. You know what? I've never really had much luck with them. Okay, so this is going to go against there. Nice and square. Okay, that side's done. Okay, well with those all screwed on, I am very happy with this corner. So basically what I'm going to do is just take out the two front screws, loosen the two back screws, pivot it out, goop it up with glue, and slide it back in, and it should stay relatively well aligned. Let's see. Okay, there we go. That opens right up. Get some glue on there, swing it back in. Everybody's favorite, Gorilla Glue. All over. Now Gorilla Glue, as we all know, urethane glue, will foam up. So it tends to drive the joint open. So you got to make sure you don't have too much, and you got to make sure you can clamp really well. The upside of it, of course, is it's incredibly strong. Close that back up, and that should be a very nice match. Okay, excellent. Okay, so we also need to put my little screwing block in on the inside, right? So let's get to that. I don't know if you can see with all this bright light, but it's going to go down into that corner because that's the bottom when the top is cut off. So again, let's glue this up a bit. All right, beauty. That's going to be pretty robust. So this piece is going to be the top, of which 18 inches of it is going to lift up to access the instrumentation, and the last 6 inches is going to stay to support the Morse controls. So basically that'll go right there. And because these are grain matched, I want to make darn sure I don't lose track of what goes where, so I just put a little piece of tape on it to keep track. Now I just need to put a 2-inch strip at the back because the last 2 inches doesn't tip up. So I just need a 2-inch by 24-inch strip. Alright, and here's my 2-inch back piece, and because this should look like one solid piece of wood, I'm going to try and flip the grain around. In fact, I think that's pretty good right there. So there we go. So the helm controls are here, the Morse controls, and this tips up to reveal all the instrumentation. Woohoo! Love it, love it, love it. So now this has got to get glued up. Here we go. I'm going to glue that up against there. If you don't have one of these, you should get one. This is an awesome thing. This is actually the clamp that comes with the Craig pocket screw system. They're just a pretty darn handy little vice grippy thing. Alright, little glue. Like so. Tighten this one. Beautiful. Alright. So this assembly, which is the main part of the helm, as you know, is mostly dry. So before I put too much more equity into it, I'm going to see how this corner looks. So first I'll start with just cutting off the excess glue and then sand it a bit, and we'll see if this corner is acceptable. Because what's coming next is going to be pretty wild, and it's cutting this out. I wanted to make the assembly first before I cut out the part that tips up, and because I wanted to basically cut the angle out of one thing. So I'm going to set the table saw over. Anyway, you'll see. It's going to be heroic. Okay, so I don't know what you're going to be able to see in this light, but other than the glue, which just still needs to be sanded off, that looks like a pretty knife edge, perfect joint. Okay, now the crazy stuff. Alright then, so here's what I'm going to try and do. You can see this line comes around and then it comes up at an angle and stops 2 inches shy because this whole section tips up with the lid. So I want to cut this at a bevel that is equal to this angle, so when it opens up, it's all on the same plane. So I've determined by magic that this angle is 5.7 degrees. I've set the saw for 5.7 degrees, and I'm just going to shove it through the saw right here, just like that, except not quite. If I set the saw blade really high and I'm off by a bit, that error will be amplified quite a bit over the height of the blade. So I'm only going to set it deep enough that it actually cuts the 3/4 inch of the front face. That way, if I'm off by a bit, it's not too tragic. And then I make this cut straight with the circular saw. Then I make these cuts probably, I don't know what. Got to be careful because all my blades are in bad shape. I got a bit of equity in this already, so let's hope I don't screw this up. Now I have to stop with the saw in the kerf because of course it's on an angle, therefore to remove it I have to lift it on an angle. So I sure didn't want to lift it while it was running. And I didn't cut too far. Whoosh! Well, at least at first glance that really looks like it's well lined up with the line. So now I got to find a way to finish this cut, which I imagine is the circular saw. Okay, wish me luck. Okay, well, it's certainly not a disaster. So these final plunge cuts I'm going to do with my bung cutter, which is basically a one-sided saw. So the saw kerf is only on the upside so that you can cut plugs off with it. You've seen me use it before. But it's also a pretty handy pull saw. And you can use it up against the square because this side of the saw won't cut, so I can slide all the way down the square and not cut anything. There we go. And this is the piece that tips up. Little sanding, cleaning up, that'll actually look pretty good. This is the absolute worst light to be doing this in, this harsh light. This is beer drinking light. But I am so eager to see how this turns out. So far it is absolutely brilliant. Okay, it's time to try and do a test fit. The trick is getting the height right, because I got to drill a hole for this. Okay, so to determine the vertical location of the hole for the shaft is a bit tricky. So what I've decided to do, I'm going to hold a straight edge against here, like everything on a boat. Very few things are parallel. And I'm going to use this, which is the piece at the top, and I'm going to slide it right up to where it's going to be. Alright, so I now know that this is exactly where the top is going to be. Meaning then the top of the square here is at the top of the carcass of the cabinet. Only the end of that really counts. So that is the top of the carcass. So if I take this and project it out from there, again only the top of that counts. And get this square and take a tape measure from the top of that down to the shaft, and this is the part I have to eye, but I'm pretty good at this. The escutcheon is relatively large for this, so if I miss by a little bit, I'm okay. Not anxious about this at all. There we go. Oh my gosh, I like it, I like it, I like it. Okay, time to build more of this. Okay, so I gotta make a back frame to this basically, which is what's going to attach it to the boat. It's not all that interesting, but I'll just get going on it and I'll show you one of my favorite tools, Craig screws, which are a fantastic tool if you've never used it before. Basically, you're just going to have to watch to see what this does. This is a clamp that holds your workpiece in here, and this shouldered screw, I hope I hold it steady enough for long enough and it's in focus. I really doubt it is. This camera's not working for me. Goes in this jig and cuts a pocket screw in a piece of wood, and it's used very common in cabinetry, not necessarily so much in boats, but in certain places it's very appropriate. Really nice when you can clamp this onto your table. Okay, there's nothing to it. You basically take this and drill it twice. Okay, and what you have now is two beautiful little pocket holes. So those two are going to go there. I'm going to do two regular screws into the end of this here, and in this direction I'm going to put two more pocket screws into this. Oh, I love my new counterbores. It's time to take the brace off the lid piece here, just because I need to be able to set the whole thing upside down on the bench and be flush. I hope this doesn't bite me, because these this joint is only glued, not screwed in any way. So if it comes apart, I will be very upset. Very nice. Holy moly, getting pretty close. That is pretty neat. And now I have a nice surface I can put my top piece on. Yeah, and I'm getting closer to figuring out what I can do to tidy this corner on. But I think I'll put the top on first, and that'll really sum that up. Love it. Absolutely love it. Alright, so it's time to move on to the top. Here are the two sections that are the top. This, of course, is the part that flips up, which we can put aside for now, but not on top of a screw. And this is the section that is across the back and down where the Morse controls are going to go, and it was glued up. Time to clean this up, cut the little stub off, and start to test fit some stuff. Okay, we're shooting with the GoPro again. That bloody SLR, lovely camera, but just not all that useful for what I'm trying to do. Okay, so this sits in here just like this. Now it's going to come off the starboard side here by about 3/8 of an inch because I have a little cover piece that will tidy that up. And then I'm going to have to trim it around a few things, but just wanted to get a rough idea of where it's going to go. So I have to do a little notch right here because it's got to sit in around that door frame. Okay, this is a bit intricate. There's the little mark I've done, basically a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch notch. But because the corner of the door frame is eased, that needs to be curved in the corner. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start by drilling a hole down the corner. There we go. Perfect. Okay, now with the main part of the top sort of located properly, let's put the lift up shade, whatever we're calling this part, back roughly in place. And then the final top that lifts up. The trick now, I mentioned I think I'll probably go with a piano hinge, but how am I going to attach it to this part here? The sunshade part. Okay, so I've cut a piece of piano hinge. Now this is cheap brass plated steel piano hinge, and I will replace it happily. The good brass stuff I can get is exactly the same size. But I just wanted to get this set up. Now, I've cut it short because I don't want to see, let's put it this way, the piano hinge sticking out the end. So basically, I'm going to cut a rabbet in the lift-up section that compensates for the thickness of the piano hinge so that this will remain a tight joint at the end, and there'll be a little notch in here for the piano hinge. I'm also going to put the entire rabbet in the lift up section and none at all on the other section, and I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be just fine. Okay, by winding the saw as far to the table as possible, the leading edge of it, which is going to be making the cut, will be as vertical as possible, and I won't have to do as much cleaning up. Alright, so that fit perfectly. Now I'll just clean up the cut with my flush cut saw. Perfect. Okay. Oh, so nice. So nice. Okay, so time to shape these edges. For me, easing is really just a little sanding. I could route this edge, but the sort of detail on the boat, if I take you over here, this much easing here is roughly how much I'm doing. I've also done it here, excuse the dust. So I don't know what that is, about 1/8 of an inch, a little bit strong. And I just do it by sanding. Okay, I love it. There we go. The panel's been up for the first time. I'm driving along, I'm checking my navigation, I'm flicking switches, I'm checking gauges. Ooh, let's get the full effect here. Oh yeah? So, I'll have to bring you around the corner to really understand this. I didn't leave much room for the Morse controls. I really didn't. Because I wanted to maximize the space I have for the instrument panel, and I don't need much. I want it way in the corner. I really want it out of the way. You can't catch it on anything. I also want to be able to control it easily when I'm looking out the window here. As I said, it's so easy to dock this boat by just reaching out and tying on by yourself or a boat hook or something like that. So I want the engine controls where I can basically be reaching them as I'm coming out and handling dock lines. So really pleased about that. But it's really tight. There's no question about it. Ooh, love it. Love it. Okay, we got lots to do. Okay, I didn't put you through the whole process of making this up and putting it on, but there it is with a little oil on it, and I think that's pretty good. And down here on this piece, I have the companion piece screwed onto the end, so I think got that mostly under control. Gosh, there's lots to do left, and some of it is very high stress stuff. Okay, here we go. There's another piece that needs to go on, and that's a bead around the bottom. That is, again, pretty much matching the beads that are on most of the boat. So this is just a piece of 3/4 inch that'll stick out 3/8 of an inch that's eased on it. The other thing this will do, besides giving me a transition between the basically the permanent or semi-permanent section of the helm and the cabinetry that's going to be below it, it also gives me an opportunity to reach in up underneath and fasten to it. Anyway, way too much information for now. Basically, I'm going to take this piece of wood and wrap it around the bottom of that piece of cabinetry. Yeah. It seems obvious, but when you do work like this, cut the miters first and the square ends later. That way, if you chip it or it was a crappy miter, you can just cut it off a little bit when you have lots of stock left over at the other end. Okay, let's see how I can make this fit. All right, then to fasten this, eventually, of course, I'm going to screw it, but it's really hard to be holding various things and lining it all up and getting it right. Oh, plus the glue and making sure that the miter is perfect. So what I do is first I tack it with an air nailer. Now, for those of you who haven't been following along, this is a beautiful 23 gauge pin nailer. It shoots these teeny, tiny, headless nails. I don't know if you can even see them. Am I in the right focal length for the Pearl GoPro? Basically, the hole is so small that the wood just sort of closes up around it afterwards. Obviously, if you look very closely, you might be able to see it. So I'm going to use as little as I dare on here, because I don't want it foaming up too much. The idea here is not to put it into your finger. There we go. And one there. All right. Okay, there we go. Now it may seem like a lot of screws, but this is the main structural connection between the upper helm section and the lower helm section. And it has to be something that I can take apart relatively easily. Obviously, this will always stay attached to that, but it won't be glued to the lower helm. Anyway, you'll see. Oh, didn't mention I had to trim off a tiny little notch here to go around the door frame here. Oh, it never ends. All right, so this is all reattached. Everything is actually coming along wonderful. I suppose the possible exception would be that I broke this piece apart earlier. But you know, now that I'm about to take on probably the most daunting part of this whole project, which means somehow attaching these to this. And I was going to just position it properly. In fact, I was really clever and I had prepared these pieces of spruce, which I was going to use as a clamp to clamp from both sides and screw down from, but putting a little bottom skirt piece on these has foiled that. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to wing it. I'm just going to wing it. The idea, I place these in the right place. I put glue on top. I put glue in here. I lower the lid. I reach in under, I reach up above, I make sure I'm really happy with where it is, and I put a pin in. And then I come along here and I reach this, I hold everything together until I'm really happy and I put a pin in. And then likewise on this side, including possibly some reaching up under and alignment and holding up. So in principle, this could go really, really well. Out. Okay. Roughly in position. All right, nothing to it, right? Lower the lid, it's glued on. That is now technically glued on, but is it in exactly the right place? So I'm going to start, where am I going to start? I'm going to start actually at the corner. Okay. And up in this corner. Now, before I put too many more in, because I do want to put some more in, let's have a look at it. Absolutely fantastic. Wow! I love it. Okay, now just patience. Let this glue dry up a bit. Woo! I just love it. Glue's all dried, I've been cleaned up, I've been to the beer store and back, because we need beer. And I think it's time to put a little oil on this. Don't you think? Let's get some oil. Okay, now aside from the obvious instant gratification that putting a little oil on this will give me, I'm a little concerned that this wide plank and its friend over here sitting in the sun might dry out some more, and if it starts to cup, it will make a mess of this in a big way. So what I'm hoping, I'm going to oil both sides of it. So this is really a part of the process of sealing the wood, and for those of you who have been following along, I always put a first coat of tung oil on before I put subsequent finishes on. So we're just going to throw in some tung oil. This is what happens to tung oil if it sits in the sun, or at least this version of it, which is from Island Teak. And I think they claim to put in teak wax from the process of something, I don't know what it is. So if I heat that up, if I put it back in the sun, it'll go away and clear up again, but it doesn't seem to affect its ability to work properly. So I'm going to start inside. This is going to be pretty sloppy. This is just slopping it on. And of course, I don't mind if I get it all over this hinge, because this hinge is temporary. So I'm going to get it in all under here. And that looks nice. We can close this up and carry on outside. The re-glue on this joint turned out perfectly. Lovely, 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 lovely. Now I'm just going to go over it for the next 5-10 minutes or so and keep rubbing it in anywhere that it dries, which means it's soaking it in well. But you don't need to watch this. Well, hello and welcome to Beer of the Week. Isn't it a great place to host Beer of the Week? Yes, the oil is dried. I can put stuff on it. Absolutely fantastic, excited. This is another hazy IPA, this time from Vancouver Island Brewing, which is, again, right here in Victoria. I don't drink much of their stuff, but I'm on a rush of hazy IPAs. This is called the Broken Islands Hazy IPA. The Broken Islands are a group of islands on the west coast of Vancouver Island. Very beautiful cruising, let me tell you. So let's see what we think of this. I'm pretty sure it's going to be fantastic. I'll try not to drip on the new helm. What's that look like? Oh yes, yes, lovely sitting in the sun. Let's see if we can pour just a little head on the end there. I won't put that back down in case I dripped a bit off it. Well, that is looking absolutely gorgeous. Look at all those lovely little bubbles. Let's see what we think of the Vancouver Islands Brewing Broken Islands Hazy IPA. There's a mouthful. It's great. I'm not going to put it on the same caliber as some of the fantastic hazy IPAs I've been drinking lately. It is a very pleasant drink. I'm certainly going to enjoy the rest of it up on the bridge deck in a few moments, but I wouldn't say that is my top of the line hazy IPA, but still awfully good for cheersing with. So to cheers, obviously, I'd like to send out my thanks to a couple of people who sent a couple more packages. Jim and Elaine Carberry sent me the external hard drive that I was looking for. So grateful for this, because this video making business does fill up your hard drive in a hurry. As well, Justin DeCow sent me off one of the Durablock sanders. I love these things, right? I mean, they're just great. Now I'm switching from, this is the hook and loop style, which is sort of the entry level. The more professional use is the glue-on, pressure sensitive adhesive. So this has no hook and loop Velcro. They basically is just a sticky back sandpaper that goes on there, which gives you a much more solid contour on the edges and stuff. So I'm really excited about trying some of that. Absolutely. So you know what that brings us to? Well, yes, it does. It brings us to the word of the week. And if you've been waiting all along to win a Travels with Geordie t-shirt, this is how you do it. The word of the week this week is luster. Luster as in nice shiny wood. So use the word luster in a comment down below, and I will pick the comments that come in the first 24 hours, and I'll pick one at random to win a t-shirt. We'll send it off to you. Whew. I don't know why I can't keep up with this stuff. All right. Cheers to you all. See you next week.